Hello everyone, this is Krimic, and welcome back to Complete Chronologies. It's been a bit of time since the completion of the Myst Saga on this channel, and while the next entry in the Complete Chronologies series is in the works, I thought to fill the gap of time and for the sake of, well, completion, I wanted to include an addendum of sorts, featuring odds and ends for the Myst series. A video full of corrections, elaborations, and some trivia. So without further ado, let's take a brief look at a few more aspects to the Myst series. First, let's start with the mistakes. When first mentioning Kavir, I described it as a Dunny outpost. This isn't really true. Kavir was actually the family home of Veovis, known for being the place where Veovis and Itris solidified their friendship, and where Veovis first met Anna. Though this backstory wasn't terribly important for most of the story since Kavir was abandoned after the fall of Dunny, it still provides some greater significance for the area as a whole, both before and after the fall. I said that after writing Riven, Gen dubbed the age as such. This isn't true. Similar to the naming of the 233rd age, Gen dubbed Riven the 5th age, and continued to call it as such throughout his time on the age. Riven was simply what the native people of the age called it before Gen's arrival, and thus what Atris called it, and why that name rose to prominence later on. The idea of 18 guilds was something that can be a bit confusing to understand, and I made a mistake in terms of their timeline of development. Gardernay had the 18 guilds standard, and when Dunny was created, Reeneref modeled major guilds of Dunny after those on Gardernay, with some restructuring, though not necessarily 18 of them. After the reign of kings, the last king, Karath, decided to abdicate the throne to newly formed 18 guilds who would serve under a council. These were the guilds directly inspired by those on Gardernay. Now for the Dunny. I'm just kidding. I know Dunny is the proper way to pronounce it, and I apologize that I stuck to my instincts growing up and called it the former in the first part of the saga, even though it's never been formally made clear at all.
Come here to Dunny, not yet. Our group linked back to Dunny. It would help the Dunny survivors begin again, meeting the Dunny. Those Dunny's future is like an hourglass.
But maidig nie.
It seeks its own path uncontrolled, except that it flows downward, always downward. Dunny, the city of ages, of other worlds died.
Just looking at the text, though, without vocal confirmation as it is in the series, it can be a bit hard to discern, though this wasn't always the case. Originally, the language and culture was going to be spelt as such. However, this Dunny is actually Australian slang for toilet, so they couldn't really keep that in its original form. The pronunciation stayed the same, but the iconic spelling we now know was used instead. Speaking of Dunny, I made the error in the context of their usage in writing books. The script used in the art and in descriptive books is actually a language known as Garo Hevti, or Great Words in Dunny. It's a script specifically for descriptive books, as it has the ability of fitting unimaginably complex descriptions into a finite space. A space like a book. Linking books, however, can be written in any language. English, Dunny, Rivenese, anything, so long as it references Garo Hevti passages. I received one question that was to elaborate more on Veovis and Aegaris' relationship, which, I won't lie, is kind of weird. And I like where it starts. Basically, Aegaris hates the council for stripping of his status as a member of the Guild of Writers after allegedly committing heinous acts. He wants revenge on the council and Dunny and wants an ally for his quest. He sees potential in Veovis, but he needs to give him the definitive motivator to make him hate the council. So Aegaris murders some maintainers and plants evidence to frame Veovis. Veovis is imprisoned and hates the council for wrongly implicating him. Aegaris breaks him out, and they start acting as terrorists in Dunny. At this point, Veovis is completely on board with the plan. Veovis is captured thanks to Tiana, sentenced to death, but the council learns of his framing for the previous crimes and decides to merely return him to his life imprisonment sentence. Here's where things get shaky. Aegaris tries to free him again, but now Veovis knows Aegaris was the one who tried to frame him in the first place. Nevertheless, he takes him up on the offer. This is kind of weird, I think he doesn't want to spend his life imprisoned. He really hates Tiana at this point, and probably still the council who took her side. He's probably not as sound of mind as he was also. I don't think he planned on betraying Aegaris. He carried out the fall of Dunny after working for 2 years, and eventually Aegaris betrayed him when Veovis didn't want to become perceived as gods or tyrants of ages following the fall. So yeah, I think that's the only weird part. His decision-making is a little bit awkward, but I do kind of understand it. They had a mixed relationship as allies that led to both the downfall of Dunny and themselves. Lastly, I want to reiterate that the actual workings of the Starfisher included in Part 3 are my own thoughts. I wanted to give an explanation for how the Fisher brings materials from Riven to Earth/Dunny. I thought I'd give my own 2 cents personal theory, considering the fact that it happens is so crucial to the story. We just never know how. But that being said, if you have another theory, feel free to share in the comments of that video or this one. One in particular I liked was artist DeChusblot's idea that since the Riven descriptive book was likely still on Dunny at the time, a Riven-based Starfisher would gravitate its cargo towards the age of its descriptive book, or at least put an opening as close on the age as you can given how big fishers get. This spot might have very well been the cleft, so come up with your own theory. It will be as right as mine anyway. Now for some elaboration on additional media of the Myst series, not formally mentioned at the beginning of the saga, though you might have noticed their inclusion in the sources panel at the bottom, and definitely will notice their visuals included in the series itself. Because of the complicated nature of these sources, I thought it best to explain it here, rather than at the beginning intro of the Myst series. First, there's the story elements and images from the comic book Myst, the Book of Black Ships. This short, roughly 25-page comic tells the story of Cirrus and Achenar in their youth, fleeing from the mechanical age towards the titular Black Ships. Here they receive their practical education in tyranny and ruthlessness as a member of the group of raiders. The issue ends with the brothers returning to their parents, but not without their greed becoming bloated from their time with the ships. This was actually meant to be the first part of a 4-issue series, detailing more of the brothers' downfall up until the imprisoning of their parents and the events of the first Myst game. Why this never made it past the first issue is actually a bit of an interesting story. You see, if you read the first issue, something might seem a bit off with the brothers and how they speak and look. In fact, the names and personalities of the brothers were swapped. Cyan intended the dark-haired boy to be Cirrus and the redhead to be Achenar, and their actions show that this makes sense. Yet still, they refer to each other with opposite names. The redhead is called Cirrus, and the dark-haired boy is called Achenar. Cyan was very displeased with Dark Horse Comics for the mix-up, and especially so when this mistake was realized too late in production for this to be changed. Because of this issue, Cyan ended the contract with Dark Horse, ending plans for the 4-issue series. Resources in development that were already in place for the second issue were reworked to become a mini-issue prologue of sorts, featuring a canon-ish story of the first instance of the art, featuring the first Guildmaster Varsil and his apprentice Tok, riding a fertile age to save his people from famine. When Varsil is denied the princess's hand in marriage as a reward, he revolts, destroying his linking books. His apprentice Tok can't let his people starve, so he blinds Varsil, allowing him to neither create nor destroy his ages, as Tok continues to develop the art. This could be a neat side story, however they continuously refer to their home as Dunny, which doesn't make sense as the origin of writing, as the art had been in heavy use throughout all of the history of Dunny and far into the past of Garternay. Though if you want to retcon and put in some headcanon that this took place in Garternay's distant past, I won't really have too many objections, go for it. These 2 comics also show some elements of the Myst novels, such as the Fall of Dunny and the Fleeing of Riven, and having nice visuals for these events was a cool bonus. Some would argue that because of the cut production and mismanagement, these comics aren't canon, but minus the Origins location and the brothers' name swap, I don't feel like they contradict anything and more so strengthen details for mysterious elements of the saga. With the exception of the leader of the Black Ship setting a plan in motion which Cirrus planned to enact upon his return, which I presume was going to be detailed in future issues, I think it's fair to say that motivation was scrapped. Riven had a mailing list during its development, a mailing list, if you will, where Richard Watson, the actual one who provided the basis for the character, supplied additional knowledge about Dunny culture and history. A lot of this information isn't specifically recorded, at least not as direct transcripts, so it's not completely known what information now accepted as canon originated from these newsletters, but I wanted to outline the possibility. Finally, there was plenty of additional info regarding the DRC that had to be cut due to brevity. Interrelations turmoil, as well as more detailed journals of DRC members, were available within Uru, as well as online via Cyan's hosted DRC site and the Uru Live forums. I feel like I covered most information prevalent to the overarching Myst Saga, but I definitely recommend checking out the ARG-like forums of Uru Live, as well as the Guild of Archivists, which has done a good job stockpiling this info. And now, since you stuck around, how about a little Myst trivia? There's so much out there, but I decided to stick to some of my favorite entries with a little bit of a bonus recent trivia tidbit at the end. So, please enjoy. These days, Myst is infamous for its ports. It's likely one of the most ported games of all time, and potentially the most ported adventure game ever created. If you're watching this video and you tell me you don't have a means of playing Myst, I don't believe you. I think you need to listen up, because let's see how many ways exactly you can play it. I can't believe I found box arts for all of these. In total, the original Myst was first released on Mac, with ports to follow on Windows, 3DO, Sega Saturn, Atari Jaguar CD, Sony PlayStation, Philips CDI, Amiga OS, Pocket PC, Nintendo DS, PSP, Nintendo 3DS, iOS, and Android. There was also a planned Sega CD port, but it never materialized, so sorry about that. In early 2000, a remastered version of the game, Myst Masterpiece Edition, was released on Windows, and is the current version of the original adventure available on Steam. Later that year, Real Myst was released, that used real-time 3D graphics and allowed for free movement rather than point and click, along with new features such as weather effects. Finally, a remake of Real Myst Masterpiece Edition, was released in 2014, which has received steady improvements ever since. Currently, this is the version I recommend to people. It's very polished at this point and includes options for both free roam movement and classic point and click movement. It's now available on Steam and Nintendo Switch systems. I would say that's the best version, however, just over a month ago, Cyan Worlds announced a full remake of Myst for PC and VR, and looks like Cyan is really trying to make this the definitive version of an all-time classic. But more on that later. Future entries in the series weren't nearly as notorious with ports. Most of the time, they kept to PC, Mac, and whatever consoles were relevant at the time. For example, Riven stuck to Mac PC, PS1, and the Sega Saturn. Cyan still really liked the idea of a Pocket PC, and they later released iOS and Android ports. Myst 3 had PlayStation 2 and Xbox along with PC. Myst 4 had an Xbox port, and Cyan just stuck to Windows for Uru and Myst 5. All of which are available on Steam for the series' 25th anniversary. The main Myst series is known for their use of real actors put into the game environment through green or blue screen. While this wasn't uncommon, especially for adventure games in the 90s, it was a bit rare for Myst to continue to do so come the new millennium. There's plenty of little facts regarding the cast of actors used in production. The most widely known fact is that the original Myst cast was entirely done by Rand and Robin Miller, the creators of Myst. Robin played Cirrus, and Rand played both Achenar and Atris. While the two brothers would be replaced for their casting for Myst 4, Atris would continue to be played and voiced by Rand Miller for the rest of the franchise. Though, this might not have always been. The Miller brothers actually considered having their father Ron play Atris, though they rejected the idea later. Ron's casting audition was actually later shared online by Cyan, and it's interesting to look at what might have been. In Riven, Catherine is actually dubbed over by another actor. While she is played by Sheila Gould, she is actually voiced by Rengen Altay. Altay actually returned to voice Catherine's daughter Yisha in both Uru and Myst V. Brad Dourif is an accomplished actor in Hollywood, most known for voicing the character of Chucky in the Child's Play series, and playing Grima Wormtongue in The Lord of the Rings. But in the 90s, he was a fan of Myst, and jumped at the chance to play the antagonist of Myst 3, Saavedro. He's still acting, even within video games, playing Piero Joplin in 2012's Dishonored. David Ogden Stiers is also a recognized actor, with his big break being Charles Emerson Winchester III in MASH in the 70s and 80s, though for the past 30 years he has been more known for his voice work. He voiced Cogsworth and the narrator in Beauty and the Beast, Kamaji in Spirited Away, Jumba Jookiba in Lilo and Stitch, and Mr. Maillard in Regular Show. In the Myst series, he became one of the most prominent actors towards the end of the franchise, voicing both Jeff Zandy and Dr. Richard Watson in Uru, and Escher in Myst V. Since Watson was confirmed to be the silent protagonist of Myst V, it's interesting to think that throughout much of Myst V's dialogue, Ogden Stiers is actually having a conversation with himself. While official translations of the dialogue in Rivenese spoken in the game Riven have never been released, the developers of the game confirm the language's origin. It's actually the language Tok Pisin, sometimes called Pidgin English, and it's an official language of Papua New Guinea. In fact, it's the most common lingua franca of the most linguistically diverse country on Earth. It's a member of the English Creole family and contains plenty of idiosyncrasies and unique structures. I'd recommend Langfocus' video on the language for a better overview. Link in the description. Now time for some development and beta info. Linking books were not the first idea for the mystical warping used in the series. Some concepts of exotic or alien machines were considered, as well as using magic paintings, 3 years before Mario 64 thought of it. Early titles for Riven were Equique and Myst the Fifth Age. There was even a meeting early into production where the brothers considered making Catherine the antagonist. While a real-time 3D version of Riven was considered, a real Riven, in a similar vein to their Myst remake, it never developed. However, a fan version, the Starry Expanse project, has been in development for some time, which has even received Cyan World's blessing and support. Myst 4 has a lot of interesting beta tidbits. It was actually going to use real-time 3D with character models and world to navigate. Before Ubisoft, it was being developed by Dreamforge Entertainment, and it was known internally as Myst 4 Adventure Beyond the Dunny Ultra World. Some cut features included a private office age for Atris called Cascade. Serenia was going to be a fishing village called Tyne Island, and Haven was going to have an entirely new set of puzzles. More info can be read in the Unseen 64 article that I've linked in the description. Ever wondered the origin of the name Myst? It's actually a shortening of The Mysterious Island, the book by Jules Verne. Apparently, it was a story often read to the Miller brothers by their father when they were young. The story of a marooned adventure on an unknown island became the inspiration for the game and its setting. Despite being, in my opinion, one of the most memorable aspects of the franchise, there was originally no intention of adding music to the game. This was until co-creator Robin Miller decided to add some music to a few select scenes in Myst, and found it to dramatically increase the ambience of exploring this world. He would go on to create the OSTs for the original Myst and Riven. He would part ways from Cyan after Riven's release to focus on other projects, but would return as the composer for Cyan's Myst successor, Abduction, in 2016. Speaking of game audio, quite a few of the sound effects for the original Myst were made by whatever the brothers had lying around in their workplace at Cyan. For example, when creating the effects of the fire in the boiler room, they found directly recording fire didn't translate well in-game, so they recorded the sound of a car driving slowly along gravel to get the audio they wanted. For the sound of clicking the tiles in the fireplace passage, it's the sound of air escaping an air compressor tank. And finally, the planetarium, sometimes called internally the dentist chair room, due to its slight resemblance and the fact that the sound when changing the dates is a distorted dentist's drill. To end this off, let's take a look at the future. Cyan is stronger than ever with their recent projects in Abduction and Firmament and Real Myst Masterpiece being updated to its best state yet. However, they rocked some waves in the fandom recently with their announcement of an Unreal Engine from-the-ground-up remake of the original Myst. Yes, I know I earlier gave a sound off of reasons why this is not an original idea for them, but trust me, this looks to be something different. The quality on display here is astounding, and we only have a 90-second trailer. The visuals, the music, it reminded me why I made this retrospective in the first place. I am so excited for this remake, and I plan to cover it a little bit on this channel. And Cyan has already snuck in an additional Easter egg within this trailer. In the announcement reveal, it shows Atris falling into the Starfisher after escaping Gen, and the Myst book tumbles into the expanse. However, this time we see some of the book's pages written in Dunny. Well, not in the language, but rather English, in Dunny characters. If paused, the text on the pages can actually be translated. Credit to Hal G for translating the passage. Shora to our most avid of fans. If you are taking the time to read this, we know you love digging into all things Dunny, and are excited for the upcoming release. We are too, but as you can see there are a few things wrong with this trailer. Let's discuss them. We know that in Registoy, or the art, that Dunny's script is not traditionally used. As mentioned in the books, the Dunny used a special written dialect called Garo Hevti. While this language was understood by most Dunny as critical in creating an age, you should know that much like Dunny heritage, the paths are many and varied. And of course, in adherence to DRC Directive 213.4.2, we are strictly forbidden in revealing any actual text from a descriptive or linking book. The last thing anyone needs is for you fanatics to successfully write a working book. So, to keep an authentic aesthetic feel while maintaining compliance with DRC strictures, we are taking artistic license and just changing this English text to the Dunny font. We know it's heinous and sloppy. Please don't tell anyone, and never ever do this yourself. Oh, and one more thing we should mention. We know that tradition dictates that the linking panel should be on the very first page of a linking book, but again, for aesthetic reasons, we are throwing caution to the wind and making it look cool. And you've got to admit, it looks pretty cool. Now, go back and watch the trailer again and bask in the knowledge that you are truly one of the Avids. Y'all are the best. And I think that's the best possible way I can end this series. Thanks for tuning in, avid fans of this incredible franchise. Complete Chronologies will return soon, but until then, keep exploring the worlds that keep you returning. This is Krimic. See you guys next time.